Yeah. Welcome, everybody. We are just barely getting set up and started, so I'm just going to go ahead and really quick send this out. Let's see. We hope everybody's had a good week. We've got lots to get into, but as you can see, we don't have all three, but I think we'll be able to make it work today. Just because Alex, unfortunately, is in the middle of his busy season, so we just can't make that work. And it just so happens that our buddy Brinton is actually off celebrating his wedding anniversary. So good luck to, or good for him on that one. So.
Yep.
All right. So just give me a second to grab this.
Hard to believe it's already been a year. Wow.
Yeah, I made the wisecrack to him of the fact that because we took my daughter to his wedding and she did not behave well. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well, that's how things always tend to go.
Yep. All right, there we go. I'm not gonna help everybody with all the hashtags again, but there we are. We hope everybody's had a good week, though. Okay, now that we have that going, let's get this show on the road. So, excuse me. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, November 9th, 2018. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drek. I hope everybody's had an awesome week. For me, it's been very complicated as I have a ginormous pile of work to be able to get done before my wife officially goes back to work. And then these days, basically, the weekends for me are now going to be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday because they will be the days I'm taking care of my kids. So there you go. That's plenty of stuff to be able to worry about. So I'm trying to get a bunch of work done. Now, people might notice tonight, we, at least on the live stream, we don't necessarily have our usual panel of fellow geeks, fellow awesome guys. And if you're not following their content, you should be, damn it. We're just missing one. So unfortunately for us, it's going to be just the two of us tonight as me and Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, From the Shelf, Rhapsody in Cinema, and the most recently updated into the Monster Clash canon has happened. Stephen Romney, how are you doing this fabulous Friday night?
Well, doing pretty good. The week was one of those weeks of having to adjust to a lot of changes, especially after having a week-long vacation the week prior. And as many people have hopefully seen, the first of Monster Clash 2018 was released on Halloween after much hard work. There is another one on the way, and I don't know if the Why We Geek episode has gone out about it, but this project, it's exploded into something much, much larger. But given that it's of something that isn't tethered to October, I've decided to continue working on it and hopefully have it out before the end of the year while everything is still relevant.
Yeah, the Why We Geek episode isn't up yet, but it will be up very, very soon, and you guys will be able to check that out. I even have like a sneak peek on the RSS feed for Why We Geek, basically showcasing what the next few months' episodes are going to be, because technically there was no September episode. So you guys can check that out there. But as you guys might notice, we're missing our Shadow Blazer, and we're also missing our BPV Gaming. And there's a reason for that. Unfortunately, this is the busy season for Alex. This is when his job gets really nasty. And so, unfortunately, he could not join us tonight. He had work issues to be able to go and take care of. And it just so happens that our buddy Brinton Volley is celebrating his wedding anniversary this weekend. And so for that, we wish them a happy anniversary. And me and Stephen Romney are just going to, take up the reins and just talk some geeky stories this week. I think we're going to be able to pull it off, but we also do have our live chat to be able to add in some witty quirps if they want to be able to do that, or witty quips.
But what would a quirp even be? Like, would that be like, is that what they would call it in like the universe of My Hero Academia, where you would like have a quip, but you use your quirk or something?
That's probably what was happening there, because unfortunately, due to Stephen Romney, I literally nuked through 3 seasons of My Hero Academia. I finally got the bug. I finally caught it, and I watched all the available seasons and enjoyed them. So that I have Stephen Romney to blame for that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, he's watched more than I have. I've only seen season 1, and now that Funimation and Crunchyroll are parting ways, I'll have to figure out what to do to continue watching the dub. So I'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, for me, I'm just strictly on the Funimation app at this point, so that's how I was able to see all 3 seasons.
But yeah, I go through the process of signing up for High Dive, and what gets added to Verve? High Dive.
High Dive. Yeah, that was. I'll admit, I giggled when we found that out. But yeah, we actually do have some geeky stories to talk about tonight, so let's go ahead and dive into those, as there's plenty of stuff to talk about. In particular, the one thing that basically got the entire internet going all week, and that is the results of BlizzCon 2018. But Drac, you can never get away with talking Blizzard stories on this podcast. It never works. Unless you have a big announcement like Overwatch. Well, we technically had a big announcement. It's just that it was not a positive one.
Or at least it was intended to be positive, but wasn't received positively.
It was perceived by somebody as positive, but turned out to be, well, not. So in case people don't already know the story, I'm going to go over it very quickly. I'm not necessarily going to worry about the details here. But at the opening ceremony of this year's BlizzCon, that's usually the point where all of the major announcements for all the Blizzard games happen. So World of Warcraft would get additional news. Overwatch usually gets the unveiling of a new hero or a new map. Heroes of the Storm got a new hero. Hearthstone got a whole new expansion for them to look forward to. And up next was basically the game that had received all the hype this year. And that was Diablo. Diablo had received tons of hype, probably starting from this summer, like this previous summer, saying that the forges are hot and they are working on multiple Diablo projects, and they might have some things to reveal later this year. And everybody went, BlizzCon. That's where they're going to announce it. That's where Blizzard always announces all their stuff. And so the hype machine was very much in full force going into BlizzCon, even though about a month before BlizzCon, we got a nice little message basically saying, oh, you might want to tone that back just a little bit. It's going to be a good announcement, but it might not be what you think it is. And that's when Wyatt Chang took the stage, one of the Diablo developers, and announced Diablo Immortal. Basically the first Diablo game that will be exclusively on mobile market. So it's only available on iOS and on Android phones and I was about to say pads, but it's more like no, pads kind of works, like iPad and all of the tablets respectively. Needless to say, for the Diablo audience, who are primarily mostly PC players, and considering that Blizzard is predominated mostly in the PC market, they've really only ever had very rare attempts to step out into the console market. Diablo's one of them. StarCraft did it way back in the Nintendo 64 days, and back in Blizzard's beginnings, they did start on the Super Nintendo. But for the most part, they have been predominantly PC. So the announcement that this is going to be mobile exclusive did not go over well with the Diablo audience. And that's why we got a bunch of memes coming out of BlizzCon, basically asking if this is an out-of-season April Fool's joke, and all of the people saying, if you find this guy at BlizzCon, you need to buy him a beer. That's pretty much, like, that's the brunt of it all. The other thing that did not help with this is, I don't care what anybody says, the Diablo devs did not handle this situation very well at all. You guys can check out my video. I pulled out a lot of the worst ones, especially the one where the response to it being not on PC was, you guys have phones, right? Right? You guys have phones? And that becoming yet another meme that happened on Twitter. So there's two factors here. One is that it was strictly for mobile, and unfortunately that entails a lot of problems, especially for hardcore gamers, and also Blizzard's actual handling of the situation. If that had been just it, then this would have been swept under the rug on Monday morning. However, it wasn't, and this is where we actually step into our explanation here, as gaming journalists turned on their readership very hard and decided to call a majority of the audience that agreed with the sentiment on Diablo Immortal as basically calling gamers a bunch of entitled assholes, even though the Mashable article that we've got as an example has since changed its title. So that's basically that's as basically as I can put it out. Diablo Immortal was announced. Blizzard did not handle the announcement well. There was backlash, tons of backlash on YouTube and everywhere. And on top of that, gaming journalism lashed back out at gamers in general. And it's been, I think Romney will agree with me, a ginormous fustercluck ever since.
Yeah, so basically your typical week in games journalism in a nutshell.
On steroids. Yeah, because, and this is the part that just drove me nuts on the whole matter, is that I get that in some cases the gaming journalists had a different point of view when it came to that demo, even though I have since seen a lot of gaming journalists admit that, yeah, this was not a well-timed announcement. This was not what needed to happen here, and that there are already problems with that demo. But the fact that the gaming journalism crowd lashed out against the very people who read their articles, who read their reviews, who give feedback, and who give them the credibility that they so graciously like to show off to everybody. Not really helpful.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, to me that feels a bit more like a knee-jerk reaction where it's not because of this particular incident, but just because of a lot of trends in the past of gamers. And there are times where some gamers do feel this sense of entitlement for certain titles from certain companies. I mean, as we saw in the wake of Telltale's closure, of some people saying, oh, if they truly cared about The Walking Dead final season, they would work on it for free, which that is a thing some people actually believed. And so this probably wasn't the thing that brought us out of a lot of those journalists. This just happened to be the final thing that kind of opened the spigot the full way. If not Diablo Immortal, it would have been something else down the road that would have triggered this. And there's been this contempt within the games journalism.
Would you technically agree that there's been kind of a Cold War-esque kind of feel between gamers and gaming journalists?
Yes,
since Gamergate.
Yes, and yeah, I'd even argue even a little bit before that as well. When you consider certain games journalism outlets getting like paid by game companies to put more favorable reviews. I mean, there was the famous Kane Lynch controversy on GameSpot.
Yeah,
and it's even this is something that's been building up even before Gamergate kind of added fuel to the fire. And so, like, my perspective on the journalism outlets lashing out, it's a knee-jerk reaction that speaks to a much larger problem than people being angry at Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that bothered me about the gaming journalism reaction to it, and why I agree with you that it was knee-jerk, is because the bottom line is that if you actually go back and listen to a lot of the questions that were being asked at both that initial Q&A and the Q&A later, aside from the one example of the guy asking if this is an out-of-season April Fool's joke, which at this point I'm not willing to call that harsh criticism, because at that point, if you have to, I almost want to show you, Romney, how that went, because you could literally feel the tension, and I wasn't even there. You could feel the tension in the atmosphere, and so at that point, his criticism, whether you like it or not, was what a lot of people were thinking. A lot of people, and a lot of them have admitted since, coming back from BlizzCon, that they were in absolute disbelief when that thing came out. You think that this is the announcement that's going to shake all of us to our core? No, it's not. And even the worst part about it was, like, when you watch the opening ceremony, there's cheering up until that Diablo announcement, and then it went dead silent. I had to double check my speakers, Romney. I had to double check them. It went dead silent, and it was that way until the Q&A for Diablo. Like, there were literally people who were sitting from the opening ceremony to attend the panel right after. So at that point, I'm not willing to call that harsh criticism. He was basically saying what a lot of people were thinking at the time. And if you listen to a lot of the other people who are asking questions about Diablo Immortal, like constructive questions, a lot of them were angry. A lot of them were outright pissed. In fact, one of them, Lord Fluffy on YouTube, admitted he was pissed and he had to contain himself. when he asked his question of whether or not this is going to be seen on PC. So I'm not really willing to be there, because a lot of the criticism that was being leveraged towards them, and all of the people that I talked to and conversed with and saw videos on, it was all constructive. And most of it was basically going, we want to be able to play this. We just don't want to play it on mobile, where we know that there's going to be a lot of predatory practices like microtransactions added into it. And on top of that, we just don't trust that an action game can be played on a phone.
Yeah, especially when you consider that it's not even being made by Blizzard in-house. It's being made by another studio that was known for a similarly predatory mobile game.
Yes, which looks very similar. I don't know if you've actually seen the footage for it, Romney. Very similar to Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, I've seen some footage because some YouTubers actually did some sponsored videos that company actually sponsored their content. Yep. I believe ProZD was one of them, and so I've seen footage of that game that they're referencing, and although I'm not too familiar with Diablo, I can see where people are coming from with their hesitation.
Yeah, so at that point, the reaction that happened from the gaming journalism end was that we were all basically picking on Blizzard. And that's not what was happening at all. A lot of the criticism that I was seeing was honest criticism. I just barely put up a video basically saying this: I have no problem with this game. I would prefer it on PC. I don't really want to. I'm not convinced that you can make this work on a mobile phone. Not when, as compared to a PC where I can basically dictate where my resources are going to go. A phone, as Romney is starting to learn because he just barely got a smartphone, this thing has like 20 to 30 apps running consistently on your phone at any given moment, and a lot of people don't necessarily know how to turn those things off. So that's going to hurt the actual performance of Diablo Immortal on this device.
Yeah, and with action games, and for the record, I've had a smartphone for a while. I mean, I most recently got my Galaxy Note 8, but as for designing for a smartphone, it's a whole different animal, because you have to keep in mind of those sort of resource limitations and just the kind of just designing for mobile gamers in mind, because a lot of people tend to think, I mean, we're no longer in the days where people will just be playing their DS or just sitting on consoles anymore. When people are playing mobile games, they're not going to be playing something that's like deeply engrossing unless they like really choose to. It's usually something that you whip out when you're killing time, like on the bus or on a light rail, or even if you're just waiting for someone to pick you up, or are just waiting for something else to happen, like you're on break at work. And so a very intense action game isn't really the greatest thing to do. I mean, this is why Namco went the trading card route for their mobile version of Tekken.
Yeah, pretty much. And the other thing, too, that needs to be at least pointed out, because a lot of people have, is, you know, in these kind of action games like Diablo, there are a lot of moments, especially in Diablo, where you're being hoarded by tons and tons and tons of demons on the screen, where you have to make a lot of split-second decisions. And a swipe is not the way to be able to handle those.
Yeah, unless you design it with that experience in mind, where instead of trying to take Diablo and put it on a smartphone, if you just made a mobile game in the Diablo universe, but that was catered to that experience.
Yeah.
But that kind of care takes time, and that would explain why Blizzard hired a studio that does mobile games instead of trying to do it in-house, because not everyone can do what Nintendo does with Fire Emblem Heroes or Animal Crossing, where they try to think of, okay, well, what would this platform allow players to do? I mean, and even looking beyond Nintendo, other game companies like Namco and even Western studios keep that sort of thing in mind. I mean, when you look at what Blizzard did with Hearthstone, you can tell that they had to think, okay, this is what someone can do on these devices, so let's design the UI and basically the flow of the game around that.
Well, and on top of that, I'm glad that you brought up Hearthstone, because it's, for all the people, and even for some of the gaming journalists who pointed out that like gamers didn't know that this was not Blizzard's first foray into the mobile market. No, most Blizzard fans knew about their two entries into it, one of which is Hearthstone, which I'm not saying is bad on tablet or phone. I prefer it on tablet, because after about like one match, this thing is just a hot coal right off the bat. But the tablet can handle it for a little while. It can go about 2 or 3 matches, and then that is a hot brick. And already that's a problem, and that's not very resource intensive. And then obviously with World of Warcraft, we actually have companion apps now as well as authenticator apps. There's Blizzard's done the mobile market for a while now. Nobody disputes that. Our problem is that a game like Diablo doesn't lend itself to that.
Nope. And honestly, that's probably was their main misstep, was attaching an IP like Diablo to a mobile app without really established. Basically, because the mistake was that they hyped up saying, "Oh, there's going to be big Diablo news." Whereas if this was just announced as like, "Oh, this is to tide you over while we work on the next Diablo project," that would have been a better way to go. It would have been like, "Oh, this is just a side story experience that to tide you fans over while we're working on the next big PC game." Yeah. And that was their mistake, was expecting this to be the big release instead of just treating it as what it should be, which is just, oh, it's just a little taste of Diablo while we work on the actual game.
And I find it funny, you the non-Diablo fan, like you're the one who's looking at this and maybe saying like, yeah, I might get interested into it. You're basically saying what a lot of Diablo fans that I have been talking to have said. If this had been coupled with Diablo 4, basically like, I'm not even saying a trailer, people. I'm saying you put that Roman numeral up on the screen and you confirm that it's there, you could have curbed a lot of this problem. In fact, the other thing that you could have done is if you had put Diablo Immortal right in the middle of the announcements, because if you look at BlizzCon aside from Diablo, it wasn't all that bad. And honestly, if you put Diablo like right in between, I don't know, Warcraft 3 Reforged or Hearthstone, you would have been fine, because Hearthstone would have been able to end it and everybody would still have that high point kind of thing. You could have easily avoided this stuff. The problem was that you had already elevated the hype, and so you had to deliver something. And that's what ultimately hurt you. That's why I agree with the two sentiments. Like you could have either moved Diablo down a little bit, or you could have just coupled it with not a trailer, basically teasing the Roman numeral 4, and that would have been fine. Because then at that point, Diablo fans would be like, oh, okay, we have something coming. Mm-hmm. We have something coming for ourselves. And, by the way, this is the other thing that the gaming journalists don't seem to get, is that we don't hate the fact that this is trying to cater to mobile fans. In fact, Diablo fans are very happy about that. Why? Because if you look at Diablo, it's still probably one of the most niche audiences Blizzard has right now.
Mm-hmm.
And mobile, a lot, like if Immortal came out on PC, that would basically satiate the base of Diablo fans, and mobile would be able to experiment and bring it to a new market. Okay? And at that point, they can't complain. That's more people that are into Diablo now.
Yep. I mean, honestly, though, I realized what they should have responded to the guy who said, oh, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke? You should have just said, did you see a cow level?
Yes! Actually, you know what? That's exactly how they should have responded. But I actually feel like if they had gotten snarky, they probably would have had a riot on their hands.
Yeah, probably.
They probably would have. It's one of those things that made me feel really bad for Wyatt Chang. And even though I was kind of part of that, I felt bad for him near the end, because you can already tell like he has aged 5 to 10 years by the time that second panel rolled around, because he had to come out kind of shakily say, we love you and we are gamers too. And we are working hard. There are multiple projects. Please don't kill me. You know, I can criticize him, but I can also feel for him, kind of thing. Because part of me also kind of wonders if Wyatt knew what he was walking into, and he already knew it was going to be the dumpster fire that it was.
Yeah, I'm just getting like serious world history flashbacks. This is probably how Moctezuma felt when Cortez said, hey, your people are rioting. Can you go calm them down? And Moctezuma being like, hey guys, can you kind of stop rioting? The only difference is his people, the people killed Moctezuma. They didn't kill Wyatt Chang.
They did not. And in fact, the other thing that I can say about this whole situation is Alex, who has always criticized the J. Allen Brack quote, you know this one, Romney, where it's, you think you know what you want, but you don't. And I always have to kind of preface it with him and say that there is context after that. You've got phones, right? Is pretty much that quote. And so it's unfortunate that Wyatt Chang, for at least a year, that's going to be the quote that defines you.
Yeah.
And that's sad, but at the same time, that's why I'm saying Blizzard did not handle this well at all
Yeah.
in
It very
any
much.
of their responses.
Yeah, we're not at that point yet where you can do AAA announcements for mobile games.
No.
We're just not there yet. Square Enix realized this early on, where because Square Enix tried doing the whole AAA announcement with Mobius Final Fantasy and all these other games, but even they realized, hey, it just doesn't have the same draw, and so you can't really treat mobile gaming on that same playing field just yet.
Well, hell, I mean, like I brought this up, I think, during our E3 coverage. I can't remember, but one of the biggest debacles at E3 2018 was by EA, and it was by them taking another beloved franchise and basically announcing it for mobile in a very lazy way with Command and Conquer Rivals. And for those who don't know Command and Conquer, Blizzard actually did have competition back in the Warcraft days, and it was Westwood Studios' Command and Conquer. And so at that point, since EA had horribly managed that franchise, run it into the ground, they then brought it back at E3 this year to announce that it was mobile and that it was a really lazy effort to get money from you. I mean, at that point, that's what a lot of people, including me, brought up as the example. Like, Blizzard, did you not learn from this announcement?
Yeah.
That blew up in EA's face, so much so that, in my opinion, it started Patrick Soderlund on the road that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like looking at this, EA has done this through multiple times, and I mean, quite literally, if there ever was a game company that proved the Patrick Santayana quote of "those who refuse to learn from history are condemned to repeat it," it would be EA.
Yeah.
So you'd think they would have paid attention to the numbers of times between the Command and Conquer Rivals or the Sim City version that had to be online only and forced multiplayer for a game that a lot of people don't really want to play with other people. It's a case where Blizzard kind of needed to, yeah, there was a lot they could have done better, and the way you can tell that they were expecting this to hit home and get the same reaction, but they didn't have a backup plan or a contingency plan on how to handle any backlash.
And frankly, like I've said it in my video, I'll say it here, and I would like to hear your input on it, Romney. Because to me, this does not reek of a Blizzard decision. Blizzard are meticulous. They will go down to the wire, and if they're not ready for it, this is why in a lot of cases I kind of believe the whole Diablo 4 got yanked, is if they're not satisfied with it, they will pull it. However, they are not their own parent company. Activision has made decisions like this in the past, especially with Diablo. And so a lot of this, in my opinion, it has to be an Activision call. It can't possibly have been Blizzard. They were too busy transitioning CEOs at the time.
Yeah, that probably is the more likely thing because, again, Activision, the company that basically releases the same first-person shooter every single year that people still buy, it very much
Activision. The reason Diablo fans can meme out Error 37.
Yep. Which, although weird tangent, like knowing the Activision, I'm surprised they haven't tried doing anything with Blackthorn in any of the Activision properties. I mean, I can see them making a third-person shooter with Blackthorn. I kind of want to see that now.
What happened was, and this is why, in my opinion, the theory holds water that this was not a Blizzard decision, this was an Activision one, is that back in 2012, when they first strong-armed Blizzard and said, we need Diablo 3 to come out ASAP, and that's when we had the horrible Diablo 3 launch that happened that year. After that, Activision said, nope, we're not involved. We're not going to touch you because otherwise, if we touch you, you stop printing money. And then they literally they took 6 years and hadn't learned their lesson. And they intervened with Diablo yet again. Oh, geez. Yeah. But, and we haven't even gotten into the YouTube mess that happened with the cinematic trailer, where it looks like dislikes may have disappeared or been redone. We're not sure. Comments were being deleted. Like, there's so much to the story. We literally can't cover it all tonight.
Yeah, it's a lot has happened, but I think it proves as a nice little microcosm of the current state of both the games industry and games journalism in a nutshell. It very much reminds me of, well, the year that Nintendo ruined my family's Christmas, where nobody's looking good.
Pretty much. So unfortunately, I think that's pretty much, we hit the nail on the head here. It was a bad announcement overall. If you guys want additional details, you guys can check out my Diablo Immortal video kind of going into detail about it. But yeah, like the consensus from both of us is just this didn't go over well at all. And in a lot of cases, there are a lot of people that need to rethink how they approached it. Blizzard being one of them and gaming journalism being the other. Because we're already starting to see reactions to that. We already got an Activision earnings call that shows that stocks are down 6% after the Diablo Immortal announcement. And already we're starting to see a lot of the gaming journalism articles being rewritten and editor's notes being placed all over them, basically saying, like, this person does not express the views of this particular news organization. It's an overall fustercluck all around. Hopefully we have all learned our lesson and we can all kind of move on, because there's a lot more crap going on.
Yep. It's very much one of those classic sort of missteps in the games industry that spiraled out of control, as happens with really any industry.
Pretty much. So, like I said, we can't cover it all, but that pretty much kind of gives you guys a bare explanation of it. If you guys want more in depth, maybe we'll devote another episode to it or something like that. Or if we have additional developments. But the next story that we're actually going to be getting into, we already kind of prefaced with Patrick Soderlund. So if people remember, a couple of months ago, the former EA vice president had left the company. And a lot of people thought it was just going to be for a much desired break. As I earlier pointed out, the Command & Conquer announcement did not go over well with him. He basically did what gaming journalism did with Diablo, where he called gamers a bunch of entitled assholes, and that they don't actually know what they want. And that started the chain, and then eventually Battlefield 5 was the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, where he eventually left the company, making a very cushy salary, might I add. And now it's officially confirmed that former DICE dev Johan Anderson has also left EA, and they have partnered together to create Embark Studios. So Patrick is basically looking to start all over again from a smaller perspective, and we're guessing putting out their own games or trying to publish games. In that right, but I think they just he wanted out of the corporate bullcrap that is EA by that point.
Yeah, so, that seems to be a common thread with tonight's stories.
Yeah. Now they apparently have secured investment from a Japanese-Korean publisher of mobile and PC titles. Can you already tell where they're going?
Well, to be fair, it can go either way, because what a lot of people in the States don't realize is that PC gaming is actually a lot bigger in Asian countries than console gaming. There's a reason all the esports tournaments are in South Korea.
Well, there's a reason that, on top of the Diablo Immortal announcement, we found out that Blizzard does have a couple of other mobile titles in the works. Not just because they want to work on it, but because companies like NetEase can get them into the Chinese market, and they can start taking advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. The thing we should also point out is that the Japanese-Korean publisher Nexon, or the company Nexon, is going to be both an investor and a publisher to Embark Studios. And then basically they're basically saying that they want to devote themselves very closely to game making. We don't know necessarily if it's going to be in the PC, in the VR, in the mobile market so much. But we know that they are officially teaming together. And Patrick does have a good relationship with Johan, considering that they were both former DICE devs. So there you go. What do we think about Patrick Soderlund basically starting all over again?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what you have to do if you want to make a clean break from a larger company. It's to basically go out on your own. But it seems that at least they have the business sense to make sure they've got someone backing them, and not, say, going to Kickstarter and promising the world and delivering a boggy mess, only to then try starting another Kickstarter before you even delivered the game of the previous Kickstarter. I'm sure people listening can probably tell to what I am referencing.
Yeah, well, contrary to a lot of people and their viewpoints on decisions like this, I know there's tons of hate for Patrick, and frankly, like I said when we did the lightning round, I don't hate the guy. I don't like DICE, and I don't like a lot of the decisions that Patrick did. But out of that, Patrick gave me EA Originals, which is just basically a safe haven for EA to bring in indie developers, give them the freedom to be able to make their games, and then release them. Basically be the acting publisher. So I don't hate the guy, and I do think he's made some good decisions. I also think he's made some bad ones. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Embark, it makes a lot of sense. Like, he would start up with people that he knew, and he would make sure that he had gained some funding that was not his own, because here's the bottom line, even though he could probably do it, and I would heavily state to Patrick, please do not be the way you were at EA. Do not have this ginormous gap in pay between you and Andrew Wilson, I think is his name. You and Andrew Wilson, and then the average coder at EA. Don't do that. Or at DICE, don't do that. But the way you're doing this is smart. Like, if you had gone to Kickstarter, I don't think that would have gone well for you, especially when a lot of people know the money that you made.
Mm-hmm.
And how much the shareholders at EA were willing to pay you. We all know that you walked away from, I think it was, what, a $20 million deal when you separated from EA. So it would not have been a good idea for you to go to Kickstarter and say, I'd like to make the next new game. It would not have worked out well for you.
Nope.
Neither would Indiegogo. Everybody would look you in the eye and go, fund it yourself.
Or more accurately, they would go, Indiegogo, fuck yourself.
That too. But yeah, the bottom line is that this is possibly a good announcement. It's hard to make that assessment when it's just the announcement of the formation of a new company. We won't know if they're a good or a bad company until, they put out their first couple of products, which is going to be 10, 12 years down the road. But as people will note from my previous statements on the matter, I'm always willing to look into new companies that are willing to step out into the medium, whether they are owned by people I know or whether they are owned by people I don't, and at least give them a chance. At least give them that 3-strike warning. If they can't do it after that point, then I don't know what to tell them. So I'm not against this. If he wants to do it, great, good on him. I look forward to the first game that he releases. Romney, final thoughts on this one?
Not too much, because like you said, it's a bit too early to tell. All we know so far is that he's forming a new studio, but we don't know what they're working on yet.
Yeah.
And that'll basically be the make or break it, is whether or not they can actually churn out a game that people actually want to play. And that will basically be what decides it.
I will say at the very least with this, since the company is aiming to have about 15 to 20 employees, it's probably indie. It's not like they're going to look to oppose AAA, because AAA would need a lot more manpower than that.
Yeah, and especially considering that the major company is someone who produces mobile and PC gaming. Like, even when you're developing indie titles for the PC, you still got to kind of be within your means and know not to try to... You're not going to, like, set out about to make the next Crisis if you only have 20 people.
Exactly. So moving on into the next story that we have, and oh, geez, I really wish I could stop talking about this. I've been doing it all year. YouTube is back in the news, everybody. So as I pointed out, YouTube already had a little bit of a kerfuffle when it came to Diablo Immortal. For all the people that followed that, there was comments being deleted. We're guessing from Diablo's end, or the holders of the Diablo channel, which would be Blizzard. We also had dislikes disappearing that wasn't really entirely explained. We've already had the possibility that Google Plus, that they've officially deemed unnecessary, is kind of being unplugged to YouTube, which is, I don't know about your channel, Romney, but it's effing things up on everybody else's.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it hasn't hit mine, but YouTube has just decided to add even more crap to the pile, and in particular towards individual channels that either have bad reputations or that they don't see a whole lot of earnings from, so to speak. So the first thing that we need to talk about tonight is, and I never thought we'd bring these guys up, is the kill stream. For those who don't know what the kill stream is, it's basically a bunch of pro-free speech YouTubers who believe that everybody gets to have a say on the floor, okay? And so they will bring people who are Whether you like them or not, whether they're despicable or not, they are just giving them a chance to be able to say what they think. Okay? Good or bad, overall, when you look at what they're trying to do there, it's an admirable goal. Do I agree with every single person that they bring up there? No. Do I agree with the treatment of some of the people that actually get brought on there? No. But overall, they are fairly successful. And they decided, out of the goodness of their hearts, to basically devote a kill stream to charity. This did not go well for them, as they had actually accrued over $27,000 that were going to be going towards, I think it's St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
Something like that.
They had accrued that, and they were going to distribute it over to them, except at this point, the kill stream had earned the ire of the Wall Street Journal. And if people don't remember from a couple of years ago, PewDiePie would have a few stories about that. The Wall Street Journal decided apparently to go rat out to YouTube and say that they're evil, racist sons of guns. And YouTube then sent the reply to them that they were holding the money, and then later that they were refunding all of the charity donations that had been accrued during that live stream. So instead of having a big old check to donate to St. Jude's Children's Hospital, the owner of the kill stream, Ralph something, I'm not remembering his name off the top of my head, had nothing, roughly. And basically went on a Twitter campaign to say that the Wall Street Journal is killing kids. Whether or not that's true is completely up to you guys. I mean, the bottom line is that I have to interject common sense here. They could easily donate to St. Jude's directly and be able to get that $27,000 into St. Jude's hands. But YouTube basically played a YouTube here. Mm-hmm. And it's not going over well for them at all. Let's go over this story first. What are your thoughts on it, Rami?
Honestly, it's a bit of a shame, but it's basically YouTube needs to make up its mind whether it's getting involved in these scenarios or not, because there's a clear double standard that has been established, and it's something I'll discuss a little bit more as we get into the other stories, but that's a problem YouTube has. They need to make up their mind of whether they're going to be like, hey, we don't speak for anyone on our platform, or hey, we're going to actively police our content. They can't really keep showing this preferential treatment, because naturally people are going to get pissed and it's going to send the wrong kind of message to anyone who wants to be on the platform. That's why you have other companies trying to start up their own video services, because YouTube is basically in panic mode. There is no consistency.
Even though in a lot of cases those video services are looking more into the streaming angle, a lot of them are also looking into the possibility that they actually right now could contend with YouTube. YouTube is hemorrhaging badly. We've already discussed this numerous times. They have not made any profit towards their parent company Google. So at that point, like, all it takes is one bad year and Google could immediately say, you know what, we're done funding this and YouTube is done. We're taking our ball and going home, kind of thing. And the other thing that I want to clarify on it is that I think they pretty much made that statement. And unfortunately, that statement is they're for whomever is going to give them money, say like Sony or Tonight Show or anything like that. And they are against the creators who don't really earn them money. I hate to say it, but I agree with a lot of the people that have been mentioning this in chat rooms talking about it. Unless you have 1 million+ subscribers, they just don't care.
Well, let's just basically call it what it is. Unless you're Logan Paul, they don't care.
Pretty much, yeah. Like if you're PewDiePie, if you're Markiplier, if you're Jacksepticeye, if you're H3H3, if you're them, they care. Actually, H3H3 might not be a good example. I don't think he's in the millions yet.
Well, yeah, but PewDiePie is also not a good example given how quickly they cut him loose.
Yeah, they cut him loose pretty hard. But yeah, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, unless you're them and there's viable money to be had, they don't care.
Yeah, so basically the better way to put it is if you have millions of subscribers and are in California, where their company is, where the headquarters are, that's when they care. It's kind of the same thing we saw with Channel Awesome, where the people who like stuck around and like had a good.
If you were in Illinois, they cared, but if you weren't, then they didn't.
Yeah, and that YouTube is heading that same direction. Where if you're in California, they care, but if you're in any other part of the U.S. that doesn't have a major YouTube space, you're pretty much out of luck.
Yeah, and this year has especially hurt a lot of creators that I know. and I'm pretty sure that Romney knows as well. Like, this has not been a good year. In fact, I'm really thoroughly convinced they need to rename the term of partner program into slave program, because that's basically how they look at it, is like, go slaves, whoosh, whoosh, go make money for us. And it never works out. And then at that point, the second that a copyright strike or anything like that is handed out to that person, they're like, well, we have no problem throwing you under the bus.
Well, yeah, this is why I started uploading to Facebook, because Facebook's copyright system is like 10 times better than the way YouTube does it. I mean, Facebook videos have their fair share of problems, I can attest to that, but to kind of compare, with the same episode of Martial Arts, Man of Tai Chi, I had it flagged on YouTube, I filed a dispute, the company that filed the claim said it was valid, and that took about a week. On Facebook, I got flagged, I filed the dispute, it was taken care of the same day, like even within the same span of a few hours. That is how fast Facebook is.
That's the other thing that's happening, is that Facebook and Twitch to some extent, and a lot of those other services that are looking to do this, they're looking into the infrastructure that YouTube doesn't have, and they're just putting it in place so that it's already working for them. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for me to bring it up here, but you and I and Alex have had numerous conversations this year about, like, how much of this stuff do we actually want to bring to YouTube anymore? Because where I don't care about so for those who don't know, I do a lot of Let's Play content. I don't necessarily care about bringing the Let's Play content here, because that's a fun thing. That's something that we can enjoy together, kind of deal, and you guys can enjoy in on it, and that actually kind of gets you sparked to check out things like Martial March, like Monster Clash, kind of thing. You know, like Romney's joined us on a couple of Let's Plays. In fact, we're already talking about doing one very soon, and that's just a great way to be able to do that. The other issue, however, is, like, I do game reviews, I do this podcast, and those are the things that I really don't want to bring to YouTube anymore, because YouTube is giving me no reason to. They're at that point, like, I have to literally look at this from a business perspective. As a business, as a person who has this business, this podcast that I want to promote, do I want to go to a company that has a horrible reputation when it comes to their partners? No, absolutely not. That's like signing on to the really craptastic MCNs that plague YouTube.
So basically, like signing a contract with Maker.
Yeah, pretty much. So at that point, I think that with that we can brush into the next one, which makes this even worse, because now it's very clear that the creators are in turn lashing out against YouTube. And we're going to start off with the YouTuber Shirako. I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it. I don't think anybody really is, because I've seen numerous iterations of it. But to bring people up to speed, he was either streaming. He was grabbing random footage. I've seen the video, but it was random footage. It wasn't a stream. He was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on his channel, and he came across a quest in the game that basically requires you to take a feminist.
Well, actually, it's not a quest. What it is that Shirako encountered in the game, there's an NPC where you encounter a suffragette, a woman who was campaigning for women to have the vote. And he basically posted a series of videos where he brought this NPC to various untimely ends in various ways. First punching, then killing said NPC and leaving it in a pig pen, or doing various other things. And
the one that got brought up by everybody was where they basically hogtied her, drug her out to a swamp, and fed her to crocodiles or alligators, one of the two. And so at that point, Shirako was very pleasantly or unpleasantly shocked to see that his channel had been terminated. He had received, the way that I understand the story is, he had received maybe one strike on the channel at that point, but this was basically a 3 strikes, you're out instantly, and it was because of the fact that he picked this suffragette, and people took it as him killing feminists. Okay?
Yeah, well, and the titles of the videos most certainly...
Yeah, how to take care of feminists, yeah.
It wasn't even that. It was like it was like annoying feminist fed to pigs, annoying feminist fed to crocodiles, and
Yeah.
or like punching a feminist, stuff like that. And so it was kind of clear he was very much using shocking seeming titles to get people to click.
Exactly. So at that point, but at the same time, like unfortunately, this is the YouTube norm. Like we have this issue of like, if we don't do clickbaity titles and we don't put boobs on the thumbnails, we probably won't get that viewership. But he will, kind of thing, because he's exploiting it. And I'm not saying that that's bad. He is doing what he needs to do to be able to get ahead there. It's a seedy practice. I'll give him that, or I'll give people that. But he did what was necessary. Found out his channel was banned, and a bunch of creators basically stepped up for him, helped him get his channel back, where he promptly the next day put how to properly deport Mexicans with more Red Dead 2 footage.
To kind of explain here, first it was taken down, but it was restored, but the offending videos have since been age restricted, which,
yes,
as the head of YouTube Gaming, I'm looking up his name here, as Ryan Wyatt, who's basically the head of the gaming part of YouTube, basically said that that is what they should have done first. They shouldn't have gone straight to deletion. They should have just simply age restricted his videos, which also,
and that would be appropriate considering that Red Dead 2 is that kind of a game. Like, you are not playing a good guy in it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it already has an M rating as well, so it makes sense. I mean, having it being age restricted does cut into revenue considerably, but at least there it makes sense. It's an M-rated game, so naturally you would lock it to an audience that would, be able to buy and play said M-rated game.
Pretty much, and not only that, but it's Rockstar. Rockstar already has that notorious reputation for doing a bunch of stuff that people are very vehemently against. I mean, Grand Theft Auto is built upon that kind of a reputation too. Same thing with the first Red Dead Redemption. So it's not like this is new ground for them either. And in fact, a lot of fans know that, and that's why they put up these kinds of inflammatory videos, is because they know they'll get reactions like that.
And plus, the other key distinction here is that what was issued, it was a community guideline strike that the channel was levied. So it wasn't a copyright strike, it was like a community guideline strike saying, oh, it's inciting violence, oh, it's violating like content against posting shocking content or gory content. Yeah. But the thing is, those guidelines are there to prevent people from uploading, actual violence against actual people, whereas this is a video game. It's not a real person. It's taking place in a virtual world. And honestly, the kind of stuff that gets shown by Let's Players on YouTube without getting flagged, even without any age restrictions, and this is with M-rated titles, often show things that are much worse than what you would see with these videos. And so you can...
just as an example, one of my Let's Plays with my wife is God of War. Mm-hmm. God of War, people!
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at people playing games like Condemned or Outlast or a lot of the very more violent and scary games, it's very much one of those cases where, hey, YouTube kind of have those consistent standards, and so you can tell it wasn't because of the content of the videos themselves per se. Someone was reacting to the titles and to the comments of those videos and not really taking the actual content into consideration, and was jumping straight to the bans, which at least Richard Wyatt owned up to it, saying, hey, yeah, the way Ron Wyatt, my apologies, at least the way he stated, it's like, hey, sometimes we make mistakes, we should have handled this a little bit better. We should have age restricted it instead of banning it, as they were not community guideline violation. At least he's owning up to it, and that's at least a case.
I'll give him credit for that. That's way more than, if I murder her name, I'm sorry, Susan Wojcicki has done all this year. Okay, so I'll give him that credit.
But again, it speaks to that same double standard, though, because you get that sort of treatment from the gaming side of it because, well, handling gaming, you kind of understand that sort of thing is common. But if this didn't get as much attention as it did, the guy probably wouldn't have ever gotten his channel back. But like I said, unless you're Logan Paul and have a bunch of subscribers and are in California, YouTube doesn't really seem to care. Because I doubt if this was handled by the main YouTube people, you wouldn't have even gotten this sort of statement.
He really wouldn't have. The other thing is, so kind of transitioning into this, because this is one example. We have more, unfortunately. And the next one that we need to talk about literally happened, I think, yesterday, when the YouTuber Black Critic guy put up a video very aptly titled, "I Think I'm Done with YouTube," where he pretty much stated that he had received a copyright strike for his Let's Watch series. Now, for people who don't necessarily know what that is, I will very quickly explain it. Basically, what he does is he pulls up a live stream. He says, okay, I'm going to watch this movie or this TV show with you guys. I'm not going to put up footage. You're not going to hear it. It's going to be in my headphones. I'm going to tell you, like, I'm at this point, and then we are going to watch together, kind of thing. So the camera is always pointed at his face with headphones. You never hear any of the copyrighted material. And it just so happens that he did one for Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. And it got flagged for copyright strike. Keep in mind, and you can already see if you're watching live, you can see Romney's reaction to it. Keep in mind what I said. There is no video footage. There is no audio from said video footage. It is simply a dude sitting at a desk watching a movie with everybody. What's funny is we actually considered doing this for Geek News at one point. Now I'm kind of glad we didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, this got copyright strike. He immediately appealed it, basically saying that he showed no footage, there is no audio in there, and he then got the reply of, "We think that you don't necessarily understand how the copyright flagging or not reply, but the appeal system works, and therefore we are not willing to help you." And what got better is he basically got also handed a second copyright strike for another video on his channel. And he basically put up a video going on a tirade saying, roughly, "I'm done with dealing with YouTube. I am officially demonetizing every single video on my channel. And from here on in, this is a project that I expect to earn no money on." Now, that's a bold statement in and of itself. But contrary to a lot of press that has been covering this, I think it is kind of a necessary one.
Mm-hmm.
And one only he can pull off. As you can see very clearly in the video, he's got another job. And he can do that. And then he can do this as a side thing. But this is definitely a message that I think needs to be sent to YouTube, is that if you're going to continue to pull this crap, and we can still sustain ourselves, this is just extra income, I don't know if this would do much good, but I would love to be able to see a bunch more channels doing this.
Yeah, because I know this is what Jim Sterling does with his Jimquisition series, where he does the copy content ID gridlock, where he puts so much copyrighted content in his videos that no one can claim any monetization.
Yeah, so at that point, I have to applaud the guy. I think he's taking a very serious step. He's very much saying, like, I'm not going to ever make any additional income with these videos, unlike other people on the format, because there's just no point in it. But it's one of those things where I would almost like to see a movement happen on YouTube, where a bunch of people just start demonetizing their videos. And it would send a message to YouTube. The only thing that I'm really thoroughly convinced on is YouTube wouldn't listen.
No. Honestly, what would likely happen is that YouTube would be just like, okay, you're going to demonetize your content? Fine. No one makes money from ads. We keep all the money.
Yeah, so, well, at that point, they demonetized it completely. So the way I understand it is there are no ads on his videos now.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying this is what YouTube would do, where it would still place ads, but you wouldn't. It basically like, fine, you're going to do that. We'll put ads on your videos, and we keep the money.
Yeah. So the only way that I actually see this as making any kind of a statement towards YouTube, which isn't much, is if you had one of those million subscriber YouTubers make the exact same statement, like demonetize their videos and cut off YouTube from any and all of the revenue that they get. I don't know if you could entirely do that, since when we're talking about people like Logan and Jake Paul, there's a lot of revenue that's integrated into everything. And so if they could actually do that and send that message to YouTube, that might be the only time they sit back and listen.
Yeah, but chances are they won't, because another problem is that a lot. And again, some of these YouTubers with this success, they've earned it and they are nice about it. But
Yeah.
there's also a lot of them that pretty much have the I got mine mentality where they're just like, oh, well, I worked hard and got to this point. Why should I care about the little guy?
Pretty much. I mean, like this is another question that actually came to me when this whole situation unfolded was how would somebody like, say, Total Biscuit respond to this? Like, would he demonetize his videos? And I actually had to have the question, have the thought of, no, he probably wouldn't, because he's got it way too good on YouTube. Like, this is where a majority of his audience is, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, it was like when there was that YouTuber who basically was telling people to boycott the Phantom Pain and not buy it because of Konami's treatment of Kojima, only to literally say in the same video saying that he was going to buy the game to play it and review it. It kind of defeated the point.
Yeah, pretty much. So unfortunately, and it gets worse. This one I wasn't actually able to find a video on, aside from when Tipster covered it. But apparently, Channel Awesome is back in the news, and the fact that not only Black Critic Guy, but Suede was also hit with this and got his channel terminated.
Mm-hmm. I remember that one.
More copyright strikes.
Yeah, that one actually happened a few years ago because I remember Linkara. That's how I learned about it.
This is recent.
Oh.
This is recent. So at that point, it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, YouTube is just not in a good place, and I actually find it funny that now on Twitter, if you follow any of the prominent YouTubers, all of which are basically suggesting the same thing. If you want to get noticed, you need to go somewhere else. And you need to get noticed there and establish that so that then it can contend with YouTube.
Yeah, and that's why sites like Facebook have started to compete. I mean, if you literally even look at stuff like Instagram, Instagram is starting to implement live streaming, and you can tell, hey, they're trying to get into that market because that's what happens in a capitalistic society where if they smell blood in the water, people are going to innovate and people are going to find a way to jump on it.
Pretty much. And you know what? I'd have it no other way, because the bottom line is YouTube has been the worst medium to work with. I haven't been there since the beginning, so I can't speak from that experience. But since my dealings with YouTube, it has been a horrible place to work with. It's pretty much given me no guarantee that, like, even though I work my ass off and Romney works his ass off, that we will ever see any reward come from that. And so at that point, it's more in our best interest to go and support the other mediums that will then take over YouTube. I hate to say it. I kind of agree with everybody else. YouTube has become MySpace.
Yep, and it's starting to enter its death throes because that's what happens. And honestly, that's kind of what needs to happen. Internet video is going through these growing pains. The industry is changing because it's no longer a case of, oh, just basically we have to get away from that mentality of, oh, it's on the internet. It's not the same as mainstream media. The internet is mainstream now. There's no denying that. And YouTube itself needs to acknowledge that and kind of show they can't have it both ways. They can't be the fun, community-driven website they were in the past and be the big money-making behemoth that they want to be. They pretty much have to decide how they're going to do it and at least be honest about what they're doing.
Pretty much. So I'm just going to go and warn people in advance. You might start seeing some changes coming in the next month or so, as we might have to adapt with the times as well. Like we love our YouTube audience here. They've actually helped us grow from Radio SLCC where we started, but it's getting to a point where YouTube is not making it worth our while.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's very much times have to change. I mean, Metal Gear Solid 3 pretty much puts its best. It's not the people that determine our opponents, it's the times. Today's friend may be tomorrow's enemy, and that's kind of where we're at now. YouTube, which was once our friend, and by friend, basically the guy that we somewhat tolerated because he had a cool car and would give us rides, now becoming the deadbeat who won't get off the goddamn couch and smells of beer every night.
And now I want a t-shirt of Romney in a skin-tight white jumpsuit on a horse, riding off with the common sense that he just gave. So, hashtag Romney is the boss. Anyway, so moving on. Unfortunately, we've hit the nail on the head here. There really isn't too much that we can add on this one. It's YouTube being YouTube, and it sucks. Our hearts go out to those who are being affected, but it's just a sucky situation overall. Let's go ahead and move on into the next story that we have, which is...
Even more sucky situations.
Even more. There's a theme here tonight. So we just barely found out that Hajime Tabata has officially left or resigned from Luminous Productions and the Square Enix Group as of October 31st. This is the former game director for Final Fantasy 15. He took over from Tetsuya Nomura a couple of years ago so that Nomura could then focus on Kingdom Hearts 3. The news also was delivered in part of a special Final Fantasy 15 presentation where we also had announced that 3 of the 4 upcoming DLC packs for Final Fantasy 15 are also being canceled, which is potentially a lot of development time and a lot of money that is now officially wasted because we've been able to confirm that some of these DLC packs were in fact in some level of development. Money had been spent to start developing them.
Yeah, it was a pretty sizable loss as well. Like I think it was like 33 million was the numbers that were posted as the total loss as a result.
Yeah, because I believe that they were also I don't think they were doing it in the States, but they were in Japan. They were like pre-ordering these things, and so they already had to turn those in too. So this is a bad situation overall. But to give people kind of a perspective, I believe these are the ones that were announced, but the episode RNA, episode Lunafreya, episode Noctis, all were part of the Dawn of the Future DLC plan and have now ceased production.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's Arania, that's how it's pronounced.
Oh, Arania, sorry. Can you tell it's been a while since I played 15? I really need to get back to that game, damn it. Yeah, I've been this tempted to go and get the pocket version on Switch just so that I could see the story. I have no time for any of this stuff, but yeah, this is overall very sad news. Like, I actually like the fact that at least Tabata was trying to keep the story alive in 15 and trying to tell kind of a continuous story until they eventually said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're focusing on the next entry, or we're focusing on the next big project. And Tabata, to his credit, he was able to get 15 out. I believe he was helping out in some of the DLC packs, but not all of them.
Yeah, he was very much in an advisory role, and it was Luminous Productions that was producing it, since that's an internal team at Square Enix. Yeah. And from the looks of it, it's, as Tabata stated, he said, hey, I have this project I want to work on, and the only way I can really work on it is if I go out on my own. And so that's what he's choosing to do. Is like, hey, I have this game I really want to make, so I'm going to go and start my own company so I can make the game of my dreams. But I appreciate everyone else's support. And with Luminous, it looks like they're at least in a decent place where it's not like, oh, we don't know what to do. It's more like, oh, no, it's just we're hard at work on the next big AAA project. It remains to be announced whether that project is the next Final Fantasy or if it's something from another existing Square Enix IP, of which there is several. Yes. And so it's a case where it's like, although it's sad that the DLC is somewhat has been canceled except for episode Arden, it's a case where at least it's not like the company is going under. It's just a case of, hey, this guy is leaving the company, and the team decided to put their resources towards the next AAA project, probably at Square Enix's behest. But it also goes to show Square really needs to stop announcing things until they actually know they're going to actually deliver.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the other problem that Square Enix is having here is that these things were announced before they had even taken in the possibility of the success of the other DLC packs, from what I understand. They basically just made this grandiose announcement and then realized, oh yeah, we can't really pull this off. And you'd think they would have learned with other things happening this year, like, Final Fantasy VII Remake having to go back to square one, or the fact that Kingdom Hearts 3 got delayed yet again, or, like half of the stuff that's been going on with them, or the fact that we didn't technically report on this, but Nobuo Uematsu getting sick and kind of stepping away from Square Enix as part of that. Like, he might officially be done and retired.
Well, yeah, although to be fair, he technically has been separate from the company for quite some time.
Yeah, he's been an independent contractor for a while now.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where Uematsu has been. So at the very least, they found other composers who, to their credit, have pulled their fair share. I know Uematsu didn't actually work on any of the music of 15. No. It was Yoko Shimomura. And there's been
that was actually a real shock to me that, because Yoko was completely on Kingdom Hearts, and the second I saw that she had done stuff for 15 blew my mind.
Well, a lot of people forget she's been in the game a while. She was the composer for Street Fighter 2. So a lot of people think, oh, she only got started Kingdom Hearts. Like, no, she's been in the industry for a long time. She knows her way around a keyboard.
And the other one that I can't necessarily bring up which one, but Alex also knows Yoko Shimomura from anime. She's actually done some stuff for anime too.
Yeah,
so I mean, there's tons there that Yoko has done.
Yeah, and so point being, and honestly, it's kind of to the credit of the people realizing, hey, a lot of the old guard is gone, rather than trying to force ourselves to adhere to these older styles. And that was what Tabata managed to do. It's a case of, hey, clearly it wasn't working under Nomura. Let's pull this project into focus so we can actually get this done, because it's been more than 10 years. So much so we can't call this a spin-off of 13 anymore. No. And it brought the game into focus. And that's honestly kind of what we need for a lot of the other franchises. I mean, I love you, Nomura, but seriously, I think directing's not your thing. Like, it really isn't.
Well, I don't know if you recently saw this other thing from Nomura, and we'll bring it up and then we'll get back to 15. But, you know, like, Kingdom Hearts 3 has already received numerous delays. And I love you, Nomura, but you tend to spread yourself too thin. You were working on 15, and then you moved over to Kingdom Hearts 3. And now you've said that as soon as Kingdom Hearts 3 is done, you are completely devoted to the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I don't know if you saw this story that broke this week, but somebody approached him on possibly doing remakes of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. And he said, of course, I'd love to do that.
We don't.
And by the way, he excluded no games in that. So he didn't even exclude Advent Children. He basically said, I'd love to do Before the Storm again. I'd love to do Dirge of Cerberus again. I'd love to do Crisis Core again. Dude, stop it!
I mean, honestly...
Do I need to play the Lord of the Rings quote of, I'm like butter scraped over too much bread?
Honestly, I mean, especially some of these games you don't need to remake. You can just do an HD remaster and call it good. I mean,
yes!
I mean, Dirge of Cerberus, HD remaster. Give it the Onimusha treatment. Crisis Core, especially. You did it with Kingdom Hearts, where you did the HD remaster. You can do it with Crisis Core. Just pay Gakt the goddamn money for his likeness and pay the artist.
Here's the thing. Like, if you're going to do an HD remaster, does Nomura need to be tied to it? No.
No.
He does not need to be. He can go and work on another more involved project. And that's kind of my issue with Nomura, is like Nomura will literally take these projects on. He literally brings it upon himself.
Yeah, and especially since some things you don't need to remake, because Advent Children is a movie. Not a very good one, at least comparatively. It makes no sense story-wise, but that doesn't need to be...
Wreck Cloud. Go on.
Yeah, like that doesn't need to be a game. People want it to be a game, but it doesn't need to be a game.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Dirge of Cerberus, even then, it barely counts as a game. I mean, the story's at least somewhat interesting, if not completely strange, but at least there was something there. It was something unique that added to the world, although the way they handled the Limit Break could have been much better if you let us play the different Limit Break forms and not just Chaos and Galleon Beast. I mean, give us the Chainsaw guy at least as one of the forms. I mean, come on.
No, there was a lot of missteps handled in Dirge of Cerberus, and I like the game. I honestly do. But you didn't incorporate any of the other forms. I did not understand the characters that you decided to get involved in the story. In particular, they wanted to focus more on Reeve, aka Kate Sith, and Yuffie in there instead of bringing, I don't know, Cloud into it.
And again, to be fair, considering the scope of Dirge of Cerberus, not having Cloud be the focus at least made some sense, because again, Vincent was a member of the Turks, and then you have Reeve, who it very much... If it was handled by anyone else, this would very much be something that would almost work as like a Kojima project, where it's like, okay, it was going for more military fiction, science fiction, instead of high fantasy. And so having it focused on another character makes sense. And I can see them maybe doing something with Before Crisis, focusing on the events prior to the game.
That one I see a lot of potential in, because Before Crisis, a lot of people have never gotten their hands on it.
Yeah.
It was a Japanese mobile phone game. And that's the furthest it ever went, and it covered the Turks. So at that point, it covered Reno, Rude, and Elena, and the journeys that they went through. But then Dirge of Cerberus and Crisis Core, you just need to HD remaster those things.
Especially Crisis Core, because it's not even on the PlayStation Network. You
Oh,
can't play it on Vita, all because Japan and their whole, oh, we're gonna only license the music for one game and not actually work in a contract where we can re-release this at all.
pretty much. But moving back into Final Fantasy 15, there already is a bunch of speculation as to why the DLC got cut and why Tabata is resigning from Luminous. We've already kind of speculated on this, but we did actually receive some listener questions in this regard. The fact that they're abandoning the continuous story that they had for Final Fantasy 15, do we think there's a possibility that they're basically moving Tabata over to the next entry in Final Fantasy?
Well, given that Tabata has left Square Enix, highly unlikely. Luminous Productions, possibly, because they did state that they are working on the next AAA title.
Yeah.
We don't know what that title is, or if it's even related to Final Fantasy. For all we know, it could be related to one of the many other Square Enix IP that they have, because we know it's not Dragon Quest related, because Dragon Quest, Yuji Horii is never going to let anyone else touch that.
And bottom line is that when you look at it, the list is huge at this point as to what they could be working on. It doesn't have to be Final Fantasy 16. It really doesn't. It could be I know that it wasn't too popular in the States, but in Japan it was. World of Final Fantasy 2 might actually happen.
Yeah.
Considering what they did with that. It could be another Dragon Quest entry. It could be another Star Ocean entry. It could be a number of things.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be, granted they don't have the rights anymore, it could even be something related to Parasite Eve, even, for all we know.
Yeah,
granted, they don't have
like a reboot of Parasite Eve, yeah.
Yeah, like, as close as they can get, because they did lose the rights to the original novel, so we wouldn't be able to see anything tied to the events of the original game, because, again, the rights reverted back to the original author of the novel, but it could be something in that vein, where maybe they're trying another cinematic RPG that could be in that same style. Maybe they want to make another game set in New York, or it could even just be, for all we know, it could even just be something with the project that they want to reboot. Like, it could be another Musashi, like
Great
Great
Friends of
Musashi.
Musashi.
It could even be another Tobal. It could be Tobal number 3 for all we know, or another Air Gaze.
It could be a number of things. The next question that a lot of people are asking is, obviously we know the reasoning Tabata left is like he wanted to get a project off the ground and he could not do it there. So a lot of people are asking us, do we think that Tabata tried to bring this project to Square and Square turned him down and that's why he left?
Yeah, it's likely. I mean, at least
it's entirely likely.
Yeah, but at the very least, from the looks of it seems that he's parting on amicable terms from Square. So it could be a case where he pitched the idea and maybe it just was something Square didn't see fitting with their system. And so and it could be a case where he's that passionate about the project and wants to do it on his own. And so it could be likely that maybe he pitched it to Square. Square said no, so he wanted to do his own thing. But at the very least, from what we saw in the press conference live stream thing, is that at the very least we know they're parting on good terms.
Yeah. The other thing that I would also like to pose for a lot of people is I don't necessarily, if they parted on amicable terms, what I also kind of speculate is like maybe Square liked the idea, but since they already have kind of their agenda set for the next 5 or so years, they really didn't see a way to shoehorn that in. And so they probably approached Tabata and said, look, we like your idea, but you need to go and make like the next 2 or 3 games for us, and then at that point we can consider doing it. And Tabata just wasn't willing to wait, and that is understandable too. Like he was running with something, he didn't want to lose it. If I were in his situation, I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah, and that's actually a pretty common thing in the games industry with a lot of different game titles. I mean, that's how, like, I'm trying to think of a specific example off the top of my head. But I know that that's how certain titles had been created, where they were pitched as something else, but then had to be changed into a new IP because of various factors. I know that game Croc is a good example where it was supposed to be a Yoshi game, but Nintendo said no, so the company...
here's one for you. Resident Evil 2 was a completely different idea until they decided to take a lot of the concept art that was being done for it and then make the fledgling series Devil May Cry out of it.
Yes, yeah, so Resident Evil 4, not 2.
No, the art was for 2.
Well, yeah, but the build itself was for Resident Evil 4, and that was...
Yeah, no, the build was for 4, but the artwork was dated all the way back to 2. Like a lot of the demon structures that you actually see in Devil May Cry 1 apparently were supposed to be the RCPD.
Yeah, yeah, but that's
Yeah.
a kind of a whole separate thing because I know the
But
actual build.
there's an example for you is like Resident Evil eventually kind of created Devil May Cry because of this.
Yeah, mainly because Kamiya wanted to I mean,
Yeah.
people complain about Mikami wanting to make the series into an action franchise. Kamiya wanted to do the same thing. It's just that Kamiya decided, hey, let's not abandon everything we've built thus far. We'll just make it into something new.
And the other thing that I also want to just kind of couple with Romney is that for a lot of people that might be skeptical about what he just said about developers leaving to go and pursue other projects, it's not that a lot of people determine that that's not a thing because it doesn't necessarily happen that much in the States. I hate to be the guy to tell you this. It happens a lot more than you might think.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it is definitely a practice that happens in Japan where developers like Keiji Inafune, who have been doing this and this and this game for Capcom for so many years, and they have an idea of their own, they then branch out to try and get that realized. I mean, we like one of the other ones that we really love that is coming out next year that we've been following is Koji Igarashi breaking off from Konami to basically keep the Metroidvania, Castlevania titles going with Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
Yeah, and then and again, bringing up Hideki Kamiya, we saw that same thing where first he broke off and then created Studio Clover. After that kind of went the way of the dodo. He decided, okay, well, rather than be second party to Capcom, let's go and do our own thing, Platinum Games, and thus made Bayonetta, which may as well, and even by Kamiya's own admission, he like literally stated that in his head canon takes place in the same universe as Devil May Cry.
Yeah, that's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, like, well, yeah, because and literally the character that links the two games it's more a name, and that's the name Tony Redgrave, which was the name of the original character for Resident Evil 4 that then got changed to Dante's pseudonym, and then is a reporter whose diary in Bayonetta, which then Kamiya then stated, oh yeah, that's the reporter that Dante got his pseudonym from. So effectively confirming that in Kamiya's mind, unless Capcom tells him to shut up, that Bayonetta and Devil May Cry take place in the same universe.
Pretty much. And by the way, the other thing that I think you forgot to mention there is that Tony Redgrave is also the alias that Dante calls himself when he's out into the world.
Well, yeah, that's his civilian alias. It's referenced in the anime.
I love that. I love the fact they did that too.
Yeah, it's referenced in the anime, and if you literally in the model, like in the geometry of one of Ebony and Ivory, it literally shows a custom thing saying like, oh, for such and such, thank you for being a subscriber to such and such magazine, like to Tony Redgrave, because that's basically Tony Redgrave is Dante's equivalent of Dale Gribble's Rusty Shackelford.
Pretty much. And I've always loved that about Dante. So, yeah, final thoughts on this one. There really isn't too much to go into. We've pretty much covered all of the details there. The other thing that people wanted us to go into is, are we disappointed with the ending of the continuous story that it looks like they were doing? Especially when you look at this, like the final episode was supposed to be episode Noctis, which does kind of make it sound like that was supposed to be the one that wraps things up. I don't know how I feel on it. Again, I haven't even made my way through the main story of 15 yet. So the fact that they're leaving it incomplete through the DLC doesn't really affect me that much. I'm more interested in what the main story of the game has to offer.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I've only basically made it to chapter 10 is where I'm at. So I'm closer. But again, it's the same case. I'm not as affected because I still have yet to beat the game because, well...
but even then, I'd still judge the main story of the game before I even touch the DLC for it.
Well, yeah, and especially considering that there are other things that expand the world a little bit that Square could very well just recycle the content they wanted to do for the DLC into. I mean, we had a movie with Kingsglaive, we had the OVAs with Brotherhood, so if they want to wrap up the story, they could pretty much just do the same sort of thing where they do it as an OVA, or if you want to put in the extra money, just do it as CGI films like Kingsglaive to kind of tie up the story, and there you go.
See, to me, the way that I look at it, guys, and this may be a very backwards way to look at it, but whatever is the base game, to me, is the initial story. It is the story that is being trying to be told. If you want to add DLC packs, I just consider that to be extra flavor over something that is already delicious, kind of thing. So things like Kingsglaive add flavor to an existing story on paper. To me.
or at the very least, they serve the purpose of getting you hyped before the
Yeah.
game. Because again, Square was smart about it. They released a lot of this pre-game content piecemeal to slowly build up hype. And so it's like, okay, you got Brotherhood building this here. You've got Kingsglaive building this here. You have Justice Monster 5, which is in the universe, building this here.
Yeah.
And then recently they had King's Knight, which basically is also adding to the lore. And so if they want to wrap up the story, they have other ways to do so.
Pretty much. So moving on into the next story, because we actually might be running out of time tonight, Romney. Jiminy Christmas. The two of us can do it with the best of them. So the next story is actually in our entertainment portion of the evening. And this one got sent to us by a listener, specifically to me. And you guys will see why in a second, as Netflix has announced that they are going to be doing anime series adaptations on based on Pacific Rim and Altered Carbon. Now, Altered Carbon is not the reason this got sent. The reason this got sent was Pacific Rim. A lot of people know that I have a very vivid love for Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim Uprising, and so they wanted to let me know that this was actually going to be happening. But this is actually, for a lot of people that didn't read the story, this is 2 of 5 new anime titles that are going to be happening and that are in development. We know of Pacific Rim and Altered Carbon, but we don't know necessarily what the other 3 are going to be. Now, the Pacific Rim one, go ahead.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we do have kind of some brief summaries of the other anime series, since they announced a total of 5 series, and this was at an event in Singapore, which is one of the major places where animation is actually done, where that's where a lot of the animation sweatshops tend to be. One of the places is Singapore.
Pretty much. The plot of the Pacific Rim one is going to expand on the 2 films, focusing on 2 siblings who pilot an abandoned Jaeger in an attempt to find their missing parents across a hostile, kaiju-peppered landscape. We know that Craig Kyle of Thor Ragnarok and Greg Johnson of X-Men Evolution will act as the co-showrunners on Pacific Rim specifically. Altered Carbon is going to be based in the same universe, which is it's actually going to be in response to the live-action series' 2nd season, as it will explore new elements of story and mythology, and is also said to be about, it's going to be written by Dai Soto of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, and Tsukasa Kondo. So there's plenty of details to be able to go into those. And yeah, I'm not seeing the other 3 in here.
The other 3 are literally the next one that was announced is called Kagaster of an Insect Cage, based on a manga which is set in a post-apocalyptic world where the disease Kagaster turns people into giant murderous insects, and is set to be directed by Full Metal Panic's Koichi Chigira.
Which is an interesting pick.
Yep, I haven't really seen too much of Full Metal Panic, so I don't really know much about that. But this next one is one that I'm actually excited for, called Yasuke, which is set during the Warring States period. A retired Ronin must protect a mysterious child against dark forces, and is being created by LaShawn Thomas, who created the animated series adaptation of Boondocks. Now,
and the thing that is going to shock a lot of people is I'm not a fan of the Boondocks. I like that idea. I like what they're doing with it.
Well, yeah, even if you're not a fan of the Boondocks, if you look at some of the fight scenes they did with that show...
Oh, sure, yeah.
This guy knows how to do action. Granted, Boondocks is very biting satire, but it's a case of, hey, he knows how to do really cool fight scenes, and so
correct me if I'm wrong, LaShawn also did Afro Samurai, didn't he?
I'm not sure. It would have mentioned it in the article. I don't think so. I'll have to look that up.
Because it's a very similar animation style, the way I remember them.
Well, let's take a look. It may have had the same animation studio, but let's take
a look. While he's looking that up, the 5th one is going to be Trace, which is based on a graphic novel of the same name, and focused on a woman who goes head-to-head with a criminal supernatural underworld set in an alternate Manila. Trace will be executive produced by The Legend of Korra's Jay Oliva. And so already you have a lot of really great potential throughout a lot of those series. I'm basically going to be following all of these. I don't even follow Altered Carbon on Netflix, and this anime series actually makes me kind of want to.
Yeah, and looking at this, confirming though, LaShawn Thomas did not work on Afro Samurai. Apparently it was a Japanese creation. So it was originally a manga created by Takashi Okazaki, and he actually has nothing, and LaShawn Thomas is not associated with it. But I'm excited because, again, I remember, although I haven't seen Boondocks in its entirety, I've seen the fight scenes that they've done. And so
I've seen a lot of the satire episodes and the fights that they've been able to pull off in the commercials. Yeah, no, this is going to be good.
Indeed. And so there's a lot to be excited for. And so Yasuke is the one that's got my attention because I'm hoping, given that they got LaShawn Thomas to work on it, I'm hoping they're basing it on the actual historical figure Yasuke, who was literally an African slave who became a samurai under Oda Nobunaga. And I kid you not, look, like, people listening to the show, look this guy up. It is a fascinating thing. This guy was a really strong slave that got brought over by some missionaries. Nobunaga said, "Hey, this guy's really strong. I want him as a samurai in my retinue," and literally, like, fought alongside Nobunaga. After the Battle of Honoji, where Nobunaga was killed, he got sold back into slavery, but then escaped and basically disappeared, and actually was the basis for Afro Samurai. And so, yeah, this is like, you've got a good creator who knows how to do action, and hopefully it's going to be based on a very fascinating historical figure. So that's why I'm excited for Yasuke.
I like the idea of Yasuke the second I was able to look up any information on it. Again, I'm not a fan of the Boondocks, but that's not against LaShawn Thomas. I think he actually did run that series fairly well. Some of the satire just didn't work for me. So that's really my complaint with it. But Yasuke, the way that they're actually explaining it out to be, I'm absolutely invested in it. Obviously, Pacific Rim I'm invested in. Altered Carbon, this makes me want to go and watch the Netflix series just to see how it's going to be connected to the anime. Even Trace has me at least somewhat curious on it, especially considering that I actually haven't really said this on the podcast, but I actually did try the Netflix series Knights of Sidonia. And holy crap, that's actually pretty good too. It's almost like they know what they're doing. I haven't even watched the Netflix Godzilla, and I'm excited.
Yeah, and like, Netflix knows how to pick up when it comes to anime and related content, because they've kind of tapped into something that people have wanted, where, hey, let's actually find ideas that people are curious in instead of trying to force the same, well, cliched bullcrap that the rest of the industry has been pushing for years and years and years and years and years.
And before people want to shove down my throat of like, well, Pacific Rim's that exact same thing. No, it really isn't. Pacific Rim has, you could say it's been marketed fairly well, but it hasn't been shoved down people's throats. In fact, it got written off pretty quickly. Yeah. So at that point, like, the reason I'm so invested in it is I like the universe that Pacific Rim tries to tell. So if you want to tell more stories in there, I'm all for that. Yasuke is interesting to me because you're trying to tell a new and unique story in an anime setting. Oh, wow, the nerve of LaShawn Thomas. He actually wanted to step outside the box.
Well,
most of the stuff does.
Well, to be fair, that kind of is what he did with Boondocks. When you consider...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because when you consider that it was originally going to be pitched to Fox, but then Fox turned it down, like, it's actually fascinating when you look at the behind the scenes of Boondocks, where they were going to do a faithful adaptation of the comics and basically have it be like the other animated comedies Fox produced. But then when it got brought to Cartoon Network, they basically got told, hey, do everything that is not what you would see in the adult comedies. It's just basically like, do everything that Fox would never let you do. And pretty much, we did.
Yeah, and pretty much. I mean, even I've got to admit that the initial commercials for the Boondocks, like, I'll admit it, the controversial commercial that came out, I didn't like it just because it was trying to be controversial, and at that point I was kind of over South Park, but it got my attention, and that's what it needed to do. It got me at least interested to try out a few episodes to see if it was just as controversial as that commercial.
Yeah.
So, and that point, LaShawn Thomas, he succeeded.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to these. Final thoughts on this one, because our next story is going to be more Netflix. It's just not good news.
Well, depending on who you ask.
Depending on who you ask, yeah.
Yeah, but at this point, Netflix seems to know what they're doing, and so I look forward to at least checking out some of these series. Granted, I am really behind because I still need to sit down and watch Castlevania, which ties into our next story.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have not had enough time, and I really want to do it because everybody's been screaming about it. So the next story is about Castlevania, more particularly about the show's producer, Adi Shankar. Adi Shankar has since been approached, and he said this before, but we have to talk about it again because you guys asked for it, is Adi Shankar is supposedly, I have not been able to confirm this from other sources, aside from the ones put into this website, or into this story, sorry, not into the website. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm tired. Adi Shankar is in talks for a Legend of Zelda TV show.
Yeah, now keep in mind, this is rumor because it's
Yes.
very much the way the article frames it is that it's basically two rumors side by side that they are hypothetically linking together. As
Yeah,
Shankar
so when we're talking in talks, we can't confirm that because nobody's saying it.
Yeah, and plus, in talks doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be made. It just means, hey, they're trying to see if this is something that could actually happen. And so it all started when Shankar posted on his Instagram account on the same day, basically stating, hey, he's working with so he's basically saying, I'm working with an iconic Japanese gaming company to adapt one of their iconic video game series into a series. And this was posted, and he says that he'll announce said series on November 16th, so next week. And then the Wall Street Journal posted previously back in 2015 that Netflix was looking to produce a Legend of Zelda series, which was then denied by then CEO Satoru Iwata. And so at this point, it was reported by The Wrap that that's where the story comes from, is that apparently it's the Zelda series that they're in talks for, but for all we know, come next Friday, it could be a completely different game series from a completely different but no less iconic Japanese company. Yeah. Those are just kind of the biggest ones saying, hey, we know this is in the works, and Shankar made this cryptic announcement. What is the other game series that we know is in the works? Probably Zelda.
Well, and it gets even weirder when you actually go into the rumor mill even deeper, as when they say prominent game company, they don't necessarily say which. And a lot of people have also speculated either it's Nintendo with Legend of Zelda, either it's Capcom being able to take another of their properties and actually do it in an anime fashion, which already makes me ask a dozen questions because Devil May Cry has gotten something like that. Resident Evil technically has. Mega Man already has an existing series out there right now. I don't think it's Capcom. I've also heard that he's talking within Konami to get another property. In particular, Metal Gear has been brought up. And I don't know how that's going to work because...
And especially since people are all... I'm looking at the Instagram post, so there's nothing cryptic that provides any clues beyond what he's already said. He basically just stated that it's because of how successful Castlevania was that this is happening. And some people...
What I'm basically trying to point out is, like, it could be anything. That's true. It could be The Legend of Zelda. It could be Mario, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and some people that are speculating to jump on the Capcom, some people are speculating, oh, it could be something like Mega Man Zero, which is kind of a dark series.
Even or X, yeah.
Yeah, like Mega Man X, Mega Man Zero, those would be something I can see Shankar actually doing because compared to the rest of the Mega Man franchise, those are actually some pretty dark games. Well, until 6 onward.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, at that point, let's actually just delve into the Zelda one. We've both seen Castlevania Season 1. Do we actually feel comfortable with Adi Shankar taking on The Legend of Zelda?
Not really, or at the very least, I don't see Shankar staying in Nintendo's good graces for very long. I can see this kind of going the way it went with Edgar Wright when he was working on Ant-Man, where he may want to do things his own way. Nintendo will want to keep it really reined in, because Nintendo is very much
you think Disney's bad? Nintendo is going to be far worse with that. In fact, you know, contrary to what we actually said when we covered Illumination getting to do Mario, I almost kind of pity them, because they're going to have to deal with Nintendo here.
Yeah, and so looking at Shankar, I can see them maybe being in talks because he's the producer of Castlevania, but I can also see those talks breaking down because, again, Shankar's a bit of a maverick. He's made it clear in interviews and the way he literally dresses and conducts himself. He's not like the kind of maverick that... He's not like Derek Savage, who's going to throw tantrums and basically threaten to sue people, but he's very much... He's clearly established that he likes doing his own thing, as seen with Power/Rangers.
Pretty much, yeah. So, I mean, at that point, he's going to go off in his own direction, and it might not necessarily be the direction that Nintendo wants to go with. So, I mean, at bare minimum, I agree with you, Romney. Like, if there is a business relationship, it won't last long.
Yeah. Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, my initial reasoning in there, and I hate to sound like a broken record, guys, but I will continue to say it until I'm actually proven wrong, is that there are certain series that in this current climate would not work. And I'm thoroughly convinced that The Legend of Zelda is one of them. And the main reason I say that is more of a personal biased reason. I like the fact that Link is one of the few legit heroes out there right now. Like he's a good guy just because he is a good guy. And unfortunately, a lot of TV, a lot of movies, a lot of anime right now want to tell the story of, say, the anti-hero, where we want to have dark pasts, or we want to have them having them walk as gods amongst the regular masses, all of that stuff. And I don't want to see Zelda go that direction. I don't want to see Link become an anti-hero. And I'm worried that's what will happen, especially with Adi Shankar involved.
Yeah, like I can.
And for all the people who want to sit there and scream at me, but he didn't do that with Trevor Belmont. I can't officially say that. I've seen the first 4 episodes that he did. I don't know what he's done in season 2. For all I know, he's done that.
Well, from what I've heard, he is like Trevor Belmont is still very much the snarky sort of character, at least as I've seen from other people discussing the show. And I'm kind of with you. It's very much people want more Han Solos. They don't really want Luke Skywalkers.
No, they don't, and that's what Link is. Despite the fact that yes, Link is a silent protagonist, so he is what you want him to be. But when you look at the way that Miyamoto and other people have portrayed him, he is a good guy. He is almost a King Arthur kind of character. He is coming from simple life to be able to be the hero that we all need, so to speak. And so at that point, I have to be honest. I can't think of a single person in Hollywood or anywhere that I think could do the story that I want from a Legend of Zelda TV show.
Yeah, and I mean, you could maybe do an anti-hero series set in the Zelda universe if you don't have Link as the main character. I mean,
yeah.
Here's my pipe
that I'd be okay with, because then at that point, my hero's not being affected.
Well, yeah, here's like my pipe dream idea for the night, where I can see if Adi Shankar were to do a series in the Zelda universe, rather than focusing on Link, maybe do basically a series that focuses on Ganondorf, kind of showing, like, kind of even doing kind of this whole. I guess the best comparison would be that Marvel miniseries Loki, where it kind of explores Loki's character, not as him making him sympathetic, but just more exploring this character who is constantly in this cycle of being the bad guy, and kind of the fact of, hey, I don't like the fact that I'm destined to be the bad guy in this universe, but this is the role I've been cast in. And I can see him doing that with Ganondorf, when you basically have this one boy raised in what is effectively a culture of like battle-ready bandits, and I can see Adi Shankar doing something like that, where it's basically a Legend of Zelda series that is centered around Ganondorf and not around Link, and kind of telling the story from the other side, and even raising the question of, if you knew you were going to become this destined force of evil, would you fight that destiny or would you embrace it?
And that would be a story that I would be interested in following, at least a bare minimum, until I got it in my hands. Then I would, if I agreed or disagreed with it. But you already solved the problem, is that my focus here, my worry is Link. My worry is Link and a little bit Zelda. I will also acknowledge I'm a little bit worried about Zelda too. But if you did it from a Ganondorf perspective, that actually sounds really intriguing. But that just kind of goes to show that I have no problem entrusting this to Romney, not the rest of Hollywood.
Yeah, and honestly, as for and that would be like the only way I could see Shankar doing it in a way that would fit with his with his approach to animation and to just his overall filmmaking process in general, is something like that basically does what people have done, but there is that inherent risk of, this would be the first film foray for Zelda. Why already go for the subversion when we haven't seen how a straightforward telling of the story would work? Yep. But again, that it's one of those things where it's kind of unproven ground, and there was actually a video that talked about this in regards to problems with doing things based on King Arthur or Robin Hood, where it's been so long since we've had a straightforward telling of these stories that when these companies try to put out these versions that are subverting our expectations, we've got no frame of reference to compare it to. We've got no traditional straightforward King Arthur story to compare it to. We've got no traditional Robin Hood to compare it to. And by trying to subvert it without that frame of reference to kind of let the audience say, oh, this is how it's different, it basically just comes across as meh.
Yeah, that's why in a lot of cases, one of my biggest complaints with media right now is that where I get it, anti-heroes are fairly enjoyable in and of themselves, but it's getting to a point where, to me, fresh and new and interesting meat would be a legitimately good hero, a legitimately good hero character. Hence why Romney basically screwed me and made it so that I was very interested in My Hero Academia, which strangely enough kind of did that, and made a very genuine hero character.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of the same reason why something like One Punch Man works really well, where it's a case of, okay, yeah, you've got like this subversion, but you still have the idea of, okay, the main character is still wanting to be a hero because he wants to be a hero. He's not wanting to...
Because he sees the lofty ideals.
Yeah, and that's something, honestly, we need more of in certain shows. That's kind of that's the reason why I like the Captain America movies out of all the other Marvel movies, because you see Steve Rogers being a good guy and not being like, oh, I'm gritty and conflicted. It's like, no, I'm a soldier. I believe in these core American ideals. This is where I stand. This is what I fight for. And that's why those movies are the only ones I actually like, because that's where you see the actual character and not just, oh, quippy, not Robert Downey Jr. in a different suit.
And also, I would just point out that this is why Captain America kicks Superman's ass. Did I say that out loud? Yes, I did. Well, so unfortunately, we're running out of time. So final thoughts on this one before we move to the last story of the night.
Honestly, I'm hoping that it's Capcom that he's talking to and not Nintendo, because there are a lot more Capcom properties that would be more up his alley. I mean, Devil May Cry, Mega Man Zero, Dead Rising. There's a lot. So I'm hoping it's a company like Capcom or maybe even Namco and not necessarily Nintendo. I don't see Nintendo going to Shankar.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, because I mean, I can imagine him doing like a Tekken anime series, or I can imagine them doing a Souls series, or even doing, what else has Namco done? Let's see, Tekken, Souls. They wouldn't do Pac-Man unless they want to really be weird. Tower of Druaga, that's what I was thinking of. I can see him doing a take of also Tower of Druaga.
I look forward to seeing what this is actually going to be announcing, which would be on November 16th. Obviously, we'll be talking about it when that happens. And if it's Zelda, it's Zelda. If it's not, then we'll figure that out as we go along. But let's go ahead and move on into our last story of the evening, which is also coupled in a couple of others, but we'll keep things as straightforward as we can. Disney held a press conference this week where they made quite a number of announcements. So they actually officially announced a new name to the streaming service that they are releasing, but isn't out yet, that is going to be coming out late 2019. Originally, it was going to be called Disney Play, I believe. And now they've officially decided to give it the also awesome name. You're going to be blown to bits, Romney, when I tell you this, because the new name is Disney Plus. You hear that silence, everybody listening at home? That is the sound of Romney's head exploding from the sheer excitement at a new and interesting name that Disney could have done.
Indeed.
Yeah. Wow, your head reconstructed all at once. That's amazing, Romney.
That's the magic of Disney.
Now I have to find that. So yeah, they announced that Disney Plus is going to be the new name for it, and we also technically got a few of these already, but they were officially confirmed in that press conference. Romney's already kind of spoiled one of them. We know that we're going to be getting a unique series focusing around Loki, and I believe they have already cast Tom Hiddleston for it.
Well, yeah, although I'm not sure if this Loki series is actually going to be based on that particular comic storyline, because we did get a movie based on that storyline called Thor, Loki, Blood Brothers, which it's just that the original
comic...
We're
not sure,
yeah, we're not sure.
But the series is going to focus on the Tom Hiddleston Loki and giving him a little bit more character development, since technically he is, well, dead. And I hate to spoil that for you guys, but he is dead.
Well, I mean, come on. If they haven't seen Infinity War by now, it's their own fault.
Exactly. I mean, you went and saw Infinity War. So they will have the Loki series. We have also confirmed that there will be an Anthony Mackie Falcon series, as well as and I always forget this girl. Poor girl. I keep on forgetting your name, but Scarlet Witch is also going to be getting a series on the Disney Plus platform, as well as one that has been receiving a little bit of controversy. There will be a Rogue One prequel series, which will have a returning actor from the movie, basically going into the events leading up to Rogue One.
Well, to be fair, the premise itself isn't too far-fetched. To kind of
It's
explain,
really not.
Diego Luna is reprising his role as Cassian Andor, who, when we see him in Rogue One, is already an established member of the Rebel Alliance. So it's basically what they're pitching is basically a spy thriller series set in the Star Wars universe, which I can get behind. They're not trying to do anything. They're not trying to fill in gaps that don't need to be filled in. It's just a case of, hey, let's explore some of the guerrilla tactics and spy espionage stuff the Rebellion obviously had to do before they could get the Death Star plans.
No, I like this series. I also like the, I think this has also been confirmed for the Disney streaming service, the Mandalorian series that is going to be happening. Both of those have intriguing prospects to me in the Star Wars universe. They at least have more intriguing prospects to me than Solo did.
Yeah, and honestly, it's also it'll be nice to see series that don't feel the need to work in the Jedi in every single way. Because, again, I get it. Jedi are awesome. The lightsabers are awesome. The lightsaber fights are awesome. But there's a lot more to the Star Wars universe than that. And granted, Solo tried, but their mistake was that they made a prequel for a character whose story had run its course, and there was no interest there. And so something like focusing on Cassian Andor makes sense. Focusing on the Mandalorian, which, let's face it, it's probably going to be Boba Fett, because what other Mandalorian would they use?
That's my guess, yeah. I have a feeling that when we get more details on the Mandalorian, it's going to be announced that it's Boba Fett, and they're officially going to say, yeah, the Boba Fett movie's scrapped, kind of thing.
Yeah, which, I mean, unless we run into another Star Wars 1313 scenario.
Well, here's the thing. We already know that there's going to be elements from 1313 that will show up in The Mandalorian. They're going to be minor things. Like, a lot of people expected that it was going to be the same character and everything like that. We can't confirm that. There's actually been talk that maybe the plot line of 1313 might be a season's plot. We don't know that.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at it, it's too early to tell since, again, The Mandalorian, it's a very vague title. We only know that Jon Favreau's working on it, and, well, Mandalore is a planet, so it could mean a lot of things. And I think technically even correct me if I'm wrong, but Obi-Wan is Mandalorian, isn't he? Or is he?
Yes, it's confirmed.
Yeah, and so that could, I mean, as much as I would dislike it, I'm just like, okay, if they decide to work that into some way, it could be a case of, hey, maybe you see either a younger Obi-Wan or someone who maybe knew Obi-Wan before, or something that ties into the Clone Wars in some way, shape, or form. Or they could do the Shadows of the Empire route, where it's like, oh, this is just what a Mandalorian was doing as a bounty hunter or something in the gap between episode 3 and 4.
Well, and the other thing that also could be done here is that Clone Wars and Rebels and a bunch of other iterations have influenced the Mandalore kind of way of life and mythos to be something that should be taken advantage of. And I've known that LucasArts wanted to do something with it. Obviously, 1313 was going to be their iteration. So I knew that Disney would eventually pick up this mantle because they'd already done so with, they'd seen it with Clone Wars, and they even picked it up in Rebels. I've even heard talk that Resistance is eventually going to focus on Mandalorians. So at that point, it only made sense for them to actually do a series based on a Mandalorian. Especially when you consider all of the lore that Mandalore actually has to it. You just mentioned that Obi-Wan is confirmed to be from Mandalore now. One of the most prominent lightsabers in Clone Wars and in Rebels is the lightsaber wielded by the first ever Mandalorian Jedi. So there's tons of lore to be able to go and explore, and I think that all of this is intentional. They want to be able to explore this lore that everybody has with Mandalorian culture.
Yeah, because I remember there was even an extended universe novel, granted it's not canon now, that pretty much created a very interesting premise that I looked at. I'm just like, hey, this could be a TV show. Yeah. And the idea is that it was a Jedi who evaded Order 66 and was in hiding and basically was making his way in the galaxy as a private investigator. And so that was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for all we know, that could be what the Mandalorian could be. It could be a Jedi who's from Mandalore, or even someone hiding on Mandalore in the wake of Order 66, and there you've got your basic episodic format of just being a private investigator.
See, that's what I would want, is a live-action interpretation of Mandalore, because the way that it's actually portrayed in Clone Wars and in Rebels is that, yes, it's not like Coruscant where the entire planet is a city, but they do have a cityscape there, and then you also have, like, actual other biodomes to be able to go and explore. There are snowy areas, there are jungle areas, there are deserts. And so I would love to be able to see a live-action interpretation of Mandalore.
So basically, it's a planet that actually has multiple biomes like an actual planet, and not just
That's
one
the word I was looking for. Sorry, I said biodomes. Biomes.
Yeah, so basically it's like an actual planet and not just a planet where everything's either all sand or all luscious spring.
Yeah, like the Star Wars weakness that we all bring up is like Tatooine, all desert planet. Hoth, all snow planet. Endor, all jungle planet. No,
Naboo,
this is an actual planet.
Whereas Naboo is like, oh, Naboo, basically space Paris.
Yeah, for lack of a better term. Now, somebody actually made a very close comparison to that, but it was like Space Monte Carlo or something, and that works too. But yeah, that's basically what we're looking at. Just to kind of wrap this whole thing, I mean, they have a lot of really great prospects there, but Romney, have they sold you on actually getting Disney Plus, or is this just too much of a hype train right now?
It's too early to tell because, again, we have a lot of announcements, but no trailers or anything to actually get me hooked. No. And that will be what will actually decide it. Once they start cranking out the trailers for these things, then maybe I'll actually consider it. But it's too early to tell because it's very much the case of you've made a bunch of announcements. When you actually have something to show, then we'll talk.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at, is like I'm going to be interested in what you do with it, but I'm also going to be watching with more constructive criticism in mind. I am going to look at what you're trying to do with it. I know a lot of people that are already saying I'm not going to pick up the Loki series or the Falcon series or Scarlet Witch because you canceled all of the series that I care about. I don't know if Romney's familiar with this, but Iron Fist got canceled after season 2. Luke Cage also got the same treatment. It looks like Jessica Jones is not going to last past season 3 because even then the main actress doesn't want to come back for another season after that. And I've actually I know a lot of people are pissed at that, but I literally looked at that as going, okay, this is Disney prepping for these new series that they think are going to be more relevant, but also the fact that, look, I love Iron Fist, and I love the first season a lot more than other people did, but these series weren't going to last forever, and basically all they did was they padded time to the next Daredevil, which is what everybody wanted.
Yeah, and honestly, as someone I tried watching Daredevil, but after that first episode, I realized, hey, I don't actually have the kind of time to sit down and watch the show if every episode is going to be this freaking long. And granted, as some people pointed out to me later, that was only the first episode that's an hour long, but that's a problem more with Netflix. But it's a case of, I'm with you.
I think the regular format is like 40 minutes for most of the episodes. But Here's the thing. The other problem, too, with Daredevil that I understand from a lot of people is they all feel really long, and it's because they are so dark. All right, they go into subject matter that is very hard to sit through, and it gets difficult even at the 40-minute mark.
Yeah, and again, that's something that Daredevil as a series, it always was the kind of the darker side of the Marvel universe. But it's just a case of, I'm with you. Disney is gearing up for this other series, so they want to kind of run out the contracts they already have as quickly as possible, and so it's a lot easier to do that with one show at Netflix as opposed to having 4 or 5 going on at once.
Pretty much. And a lot of this is also just going to be pure speculation until we get Disney Plus in our hands. I already know I'm going to, because I have 2 kids, and frankly, if they're going to allow like Disney movies and little Einsteins there, then I might as well get that, because that's the only way I'm going to get, quiet kids at the end of the day. So while I'm there, I'll also experiment with the other series.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that people need to remember. This isn't just going to be just original content. Disney movies, Marvel movies, Star Wars, basically anything Disney owns is going to be moving to the streaming service, which means it'll disappear from Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and all these other services. Disney is basically bringing everything in-house.
Pretty much. So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have tonight. So let's go ahead and wrap things up. But that was a lot of stories to be able to cover and a lot of opinions to be able to give. And if people want to be able to reach out to us to be able to ask for additional opinions on this detail of this story that we weren't able to actually address, because like I said, the Diablo Immortal and the YouTube situations are pretty dense, and there's a lot that we couldn't cover. Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on Facebook and on YouTube. I upload to both websites, and as I'm sure you've heard throughout this episode, I have made my reasons quite clear. I am also on Instagram under Romney Does Art. Yes, it has mostly bagels and cats, but if you were following my Instagram, you may have also seen some behind-the-scenes photos of when I was shooting said episodes of Monster Clash that I'm currently editing. And you can also find me on Twitter, which is probably the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to send me any suggestions for things for me to review or discuss with me or just engage with me in general, reach out to me on Twitter at Romney Reviews. Seriously, Adam has 2 kids. Let's give the guy a break. And so to reiterate, Studio Ghost Utah on YouTube and Facebook, Romney Does Art on Instagram, Romney Reviews on Twitter. That is where you can find me. And I don't have a Romney's recommendation this week because, well, things have been kind of exhausting because, again, I've been editing the next Monster Clash episode, and that's been taking up all of my time.
Dude, I wish I had a recommendation, but the bottom line is that I've been probably just as busy as you, and most of that has just been finishing up BlizzCon videos and getting myself back up to par as my family's basically getting ready for my wife to go back to work, which means I'm going to be full-time dad on the days that she's working. So I'm right there with you. But if you guys want to be able to get a hold of me, the best way to be able to do so is obviously you're on my YouTube channel right now. So go ahead and check out some of the other content that I actually do have. Like I've said in this podcast, and I'll go ahead and reemphasize it, I am covering BlizzCon 2018 from my own personal perspective. I already have my perspective on the opening ceremony and Diablo, and you can expect the rest of that to come out very, very soon, and I'll be getting it out as quickly as I possibly can, as well as game reviews, Let's Plays, all the other stuff that I do on this channel very regularly. You can check it all out there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Drac2326 to be able to ask me these questions directly. But if you want to be able to support support the podcast directly, as well as be able to ask any questions or submit any stories, here's the way to be able to do it. The first thing that we ask above all else is support the RSS feed, which is geekyweek.podomatic.com. That is where the episodes are going to be posted. And there actually are going to be, this is a question that we did get, like what makes it different from the YouTube episode or the YouTube live streams that you put up? I actually edit those things down. I put in sound effects. I do a bunch of other stuff. And we actually have other plans coming to the RSS feed version of the podcast that you guys can stay tuned for and be able to enjoy as well. They will never hit this. This is kind of the rough draft, and then the final draft goes up to the RSS feed. That's the way to be able to look at it. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Facebook and Twitter under the exact same headline, Geeky NRO. Just search for Geeky NRO. On Twitter and Facebook, and you'll be able to find our Facebook page and our Twitter feed where you can get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff that we're going to be talking about, etc. The other thing I forgot with the RSS feed is that we are also on iTunes and Google Play for Android users, so you guys can check that out too by searching for GNRO Podcast or Geek News Reviews and Opinions Podcast. And you can also submit stories by going to our email at geekyweek@gmail.com, where you can submit feedback as well as stories that we might be able to cover on the podcast live. So you guys can check us out there. And that's going to go ahead and do it for this podcast. We thank you guys so much for joining with us on this very busy evening, even though we kind of had to two-man it, which was adding to the difficulty of our lives already. But we were able to make it work, and we still made it enjoyable for you guys. We hope you guys have enjoyed as well. And, of course, we'll be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. So for me and for Stephen Romney, we will see you guys next time.